Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Sade. Thank you so much for joining me here today on my podcast, Hidden Alchemy Podcast, where we will be diving deep into spiritual practices, holistic healing, esoteric, astrology, all of the things, and using them in our physical world to really alchemize ourselves and truly change and transform our life. I have been blessed, I love to say the word blessed, to learn a lot of these modalities early on in my journey. I've had many elders pour into me, and this is my way of paying homage to everyone that has taught me in my past and the people who are teaching me now in my present moment. Share the knowledge and the information that I have been given, that I have been able to use on my life to see the transformation and change, and to share it with others and continue healing and connecting within community. Now, before I dive deeper into what we will be going into on Hidden Alchemy Podcast, let me give you an introduction of who I am and what I do. As said before, my name is Sade. My father named me, and I was named after an artist. Sade is a singer. She's a jazz musician from Nigeria, and her name means crowned one, and it holds the 11 vibration. I will be diving deeper into numerology and the vibrations of names throughout my podcast, but being given that 11 vibration, 11 is the number of the mystic and the spiritual world. Being given that vibration and carrying that vibration along my journey has really been the starter of being on the spiritual path in this lifetime. I am a New York native, born and raised in New York. I've traveled the world, I've lived abroad, I've studied abroad, but I am a New York native. I love New York. I don't see myself in New York forever, but I see New York in me forever, and I love that. On top of being from New York, I am of Jamaican descent. I am first generation, actually, which is amazing because I have that direct connection to my ancestors and the traditions that my parents have been able to instill and incorporate in my daily life growing up as a kid. And that is really where I pay the most homage to my culture. I love where I come from. I've been traveling to and from Jamaica since the age of 2. So I've really been able to connect with the land and connect with the people and to use these traditional ways of healing throughout my journey. Now, what do I do? I am a yoga and meditation teacher working broadly within the holistic realm. I love to say that more than just specifically saying one thing, because yoga really means the yoking of mind, body, and spirit. And there are so many different ways and modalities that you can use to help yourself and help others yoke mind, body, and spirit. And within my yoga teaching and being a holistic educator, I teach breath work. I teach the asana practice, which is the physical shapes and postures within yoga. I teach meditation, mindfulness, and of course, astrology. I am a practicing Western astrologer. I have been studying astrology since I was about 10 years old, truly on some Harry Potter stuff. And it is something that I have just always understood. I don't know how, I just understood it. And as I've gotten older and have met so many other people in that esoteric world, I've just been able to study it deeper and deeper and really apply it to my own life and my friends' life. I'm always reading their charts and telling them, this is what you need to do right now and this. But by no means do I consider myself to be anyone else's astrologer but my own. I practice it on myself first. I share the knowledge and the information that I know. If it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, it doesn't. My yoga journey started back in 2011. I took my first yoga class at Yoga to the People in New York. It's no longer there, but I took my first yoga class at Yoga to the People back in 2011. And I got my certification from Yoga to the People in 2019. So a good 10-year span of just practicing and being a student of my craft. And the opportunity presented itself for me to get my certification, and I just hopped on it, and I never looked back. I have not looked back since. I am in love with being in this holistic healing world. It has truly transformed myself, the different studies that I have had the opportunity to study, and really the people who have really geared me on that path. I pay a lot of homage to them and a lot of homage to the ancient studies that I've just been able to use. And now I'm sharing that. Now, my yoga journey began in 2011, but I would say my spiritual journey started back in, I was 19, 20 at the time. And what year was that? Oh my gosh, that was back in 2011. Okay, yeah, so the same time that I took my first yoga class was the same year that my spiritual practice actually began. I just pieced those two things together. And it was at a time in my life, I was in my personal year of 7. And if you don't know numerology, 7 is the number of the mystic. It's also the number of introspection, deep introspection. And it's a very isolated time when you're in that personal year of 7 so that you can have deep introspection. And I remember I was 19, I was in undergrad. And that year I just felt very empty. I felt like I had so many things. I had all these accolades. I was thriving in undergrad. I had scholarships. I was a part of this organization, this group. But I just felt very empty. I felt like beyond everything that I was so grateful for, there was this subtle layer or this aftertaste of sadness. And I couldn't figure out what that was, but I knew that it was something that was making me very uncomfortable and I needed to do something about it. I'm an Aries moon, so for me, I need to be in a form of action with it for myself in order to feel safe. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to do about it. And I just decided that year that I was going to do something different that I'd never done before, and that was study abroad. Now, I've been abroad plenty of times, going to Jamaica since the age of 2, but this was the first time that I was able to study overseas by myself. I went with a friend, but without family and just kind of being on my own, being an adult. And I took that opportunity, and it was that moment when I traveled that it hit me that the reason that I was feeling so empty was because I didn't have a strong sense of self, a sense of truth. And the reason being is because I've just been following societal norms and rules my entire life. These subtle expectations that I had on myself, the expectations that I thought that I needed to accomplish in order to mean something or feel something. And as I was accomplishing these things, I wasn't feeling anything. And when I moved abroad, it was the first time that I was completely isolated from a world that I once knew. And I had to, in order to survive in a new world, I had to not forget about what I learned, but I had to open myself up to learn new things and to learn myself. And that at 20 years old, that was my first taste of that, where I realized, and it was a very uncomfortable truth, I realized that I had no idea who I was. I had no idea what thoughts were mine and what thoughts were given to me from someone else. And I had to start that journey of self-discovery. And it was a very uncomfortable truth at that time. Thankfully, I was young enough to throw myself out there and to learn. I'm always very eager to learn. I'm such a student at heart. And because I was ready to receive and I was ready to learn certain lessons, that's when the universe was like, okay, let me start to teach you and to send you people who can guide you. So after I studied abroad, I came back to the States and I was over it. I was like, I'm ready to graduate. Like, I'm done with this. And I was a scholar in college. I was a researcher. So I was supposed to go into a grad program and a PhD program. And at that point, I was just like, I don't want any of this. Truly, I was like, I don't want any of this. I think it's great, but I don't feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And that was the first moment I had to make that adult decision for myself. I remember getting into a huge argument with my mentor, who I love so dearly. And I remember we got into a huge argument because I had this expectation to uphold to, but in that same breath, I was just lost and didn't feel the same way everyone else was feeling when they were excited to get into their grad programs. I was like, I don't really care. And I had to honor that truth. That was my first moment of honoring myself and honoring my truth. And I decided in that moment to go back abroad. And that was when I moved to China for 3.5 years. And that was at the age of 21. And the reason I had chose England to study abroad my first time was because I had never lived abroad before, and I wanted somewhere where people spoke English, so it would be an easier transition. So when I had applied for China, I was like, okay, this is a big risk. This is a big adventure. I have no idea what I'm doing or what I'm getting myself into, but I just knew I wanted to run so far away from everything that I had to do and deal with in the States that I was ready and willing to travel across the continent, okay, across the country, across the world, anywhere, just so I could get away from what was causing me pain in that moment. I can reflect back on it and really acknowledge it as escaping and wanting to be completely isolated and away from what I thought I knew so that I could really truly understand who I was and move forward along my journey. So I get to China, 21 years old, bright-eyed, naive, curious, all the things. I get to China, and it was the most character building experience. It was in China where I really truly developed my spiritual practice, because I was in Asia and I was around monks and Buddhists, and I was learning about yoga and mindfulness from teachers from India, people that were really teaching me the foundations of things that I had no idea about. And really in China was when I started to study traditional Chinese medicine and understand energy. The Chinese are very big on energy. They are the Tai Chi. I like to call them the Tai Chi Chuan people. And Tai Chi Chuan is a term used to describe a person who is able to shift the energy without you actually noticing that they're shifting the energy. And I think that they are very well at that, but that is a whole nother topic for another podcast. And that was where I learned the importance of energy, the importance of acupuncture, how there are things happening in the unseen realm that you can't see, but it's actually causing very important changes in your life. And learning the importance of using herbs and just a lot of things of traditional Chinese medicine, yoga, meditation, mindfulness. And that was where my spiritual practice really took off for me, because I was completely isolated. And when you live in a world like China, it's a completely different world. I love to tell people, if you ever want to move somewhere and have a complete culture shock, you gotta go to Asia. You gotta go out there. And I'm sure there's so many other places out there that will have that culture shock, but China, for me, taught me how to accept that I don't know everything and that I actually don't know anything. In order for me to learn myself, I have to forget what I thought I knew, and I have to start over. And I'm thankful that I had that opportunity at the time and the age that I had it, because it's really hard to start over, and it's really hard to let go of things that you thought you knew or you thought was correct, and to realize you don't know. And you have to open yourself up to receive. And because I was open to receive, I was able to learn on my journey and my path. And through traveling through different parts of Asia, I mean, I've traveled to Bali, to Cambodia, to Vietnam, all these places. I have been able to meet elders. And I consider them elders because at the time I was, 22? Everybody was an elder to me. I was a baby. They really showed me that I needed to learn more. I needed to read more. I actually had a reader tell me that. He was like, "You're very lazy and you need to learn more." I remember that so vividly, and it was so real for me in that moment, because there was just so much I needed to learn about myself and the spiritual world. And once those teachers started to appear in my life, that's when I took the steps and said, okay, how can I learn more about what is mindfulness? How can I learn more about what is pranayama? How can I learn more about applying astrology? Because by then I had been studying astrology secretly within myself, for myself, but I had not really been studying it in a way that I could actually apply it to my life and to use that as a form of alchemy, change, and transformation. That all started for me when I was out living in Asia. So that by the time I had left China and came back to the States, I had a very hard time transitioning back in because I was gone for 3.5 years. So by the time I came back, I had that foundation where I then started to search within New York for those yoga communities. And that's when I found Golden Bridge, which was a Kundalini yoga studio in New York. Love that space so much. I pay so much homage to Gurmukh and her sanctuary that she really created in the heart of New York City. And that was where I started studying Kundalini. And from there, my spiritual journey just continued to take new shapes and forms and new heights. But in order for me to have done that, I needed that stage of isolation. I needed to be away from what I thought I knew so that I could continue further on my spiritual journey to really truly understand who I was. And as I started to use my spiritual practice as a way to develop a deeper form of inner standing, that's when I started to understand the world around me a lot better and understand people around me a lot better, because it all needed to start with myself. So that's just a brief introduction of my spiritual journey, how it started. There's so many other stories in between, but I pay so much homage to travel. And before I forget, I am a Catholic school kid. I grew up in Catholic school. So before any of this started, Catholic school is really where it also began, because there's so much ritual. If you've never been to Catholic school, there is so much ritual in the subtlety of Catholic school. And I'm going to dive deeper into that in my podcast, but really just briefly, it taught me the importance of prayer as the first thing that you do in the morning, because every day in Catholic school, and I went to Catholic school from the age of 5 to 13, which is the most important cognitive times of a child's life. And in Catholic school, you're taught at a young age the importance of prayer. Every morning you have to every morning you have to stand up with the whole school and recite the Our Father. I have not recited that prayer in so long, but I can still say every word for word, because that's how instilled that habit was. And that just teaches you the importance of understanding a higher level of consciousness that you cannot see, but you are connected to. So that was what I learned through Catholic school. I learned meditation through Catholic school. My 6th grade teacher, Mr. Rosado, who I pay so much homage to, he introduced us to meditation. And that was the first time I realized, okay, I can close my eyes and I'm not falling asleep, but I'm connecting to myself. I'm awake, connecting to myself in a different way. I didn't have the words for it at that age, but that's what it was. I learned meditation in Catholic school, and I just learned the importance of self-righteousness and understanding that you will always be held accountable by a higher source. And that is important to learn at a young age, because it teaches you accountability and responsibility of self and one's own actions in the world and the life that you lead, just on a very subtle subconscious level. But I will dive deeper into all those things in the podcast. So now that you got that brief introduction of who I am, what is Hidden Alchemy? What is it about? What's the purpose? And truly the purpose of Hidden Alchemy is really to create a platform where we can dive more in depth into what these modalities are and why they're hidden, because these things are hidden for a reason. If everyone had access to modalities that inspired them to take care of themselves mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to focus on connecting to their higher knowing, a higher level of consciousness that is within them. If everyone was able to do this, we would not rely on outside institutions to tell us who we are and to tell us what to do. So these modalities are hidden for a reason. And if you are not able to have access to certain people to initiate you into this area, it can be really hard understanding and learning these things. And again, I have been blessed in my life to learn these things very early in my journey. And I think information is here to be shared. And the more we share information, the more we heal. The more we share, the more we inspire others. And the more that others feel inspired, they're capable of taking control of their own life and really feeling like life is worth living. I think life is what you make it, but these tools in the spiritual world has really helped me to balance out my life in the physical world and to truly see the alchemy in my life and within myself, because we are all our greatest alchemists. And it's just about having access to certain resources and understanding certain things. And it doesn't mean one is good, one is better than the other. We've just understood the physical world so much. It's all we study. It's all that we are taught from a very young age on purpose. And I do feel collectively, especially as we are in this Aquarian age, which is the age of knowledge, the age of information, the age of higher levels of thinking and consciousness, that as a collective, we are feeling this need of depth. There needs to be something more. What we've been given is really not enough, especially these past 3 years that we've had, where what we've been given has been taken quickly. And now I really feel, and I feel this from the students that come into my class and just the conversations that I have with people, that we are really in a time of deeper knowings of self and taking better care of self and living on earth with a lot more peace, a lot more ease, and paying homage. What am I here to give? Especially the sign Aquarius, it rules humanity and it rules making life easier for humanity. And I do feel that as a collective, we're just yearning for that within ourselves. What does this all mean? What am I really here to do? And how am I really being of service and of use to others? Now, that's not law. That doesn't mean that this is everybody's law, but this is just what I'm feeling on a spiritual and collective level through the people that I interact with. And I got this inclining to create this platform specifically for that, to connect with other folks so that people don't feel weird along their journey or don't feel unseen or unheard, and can really find a community to just connect, take what works for you and use that along your journey. And that's the beautiful thing about mentorship and being given knowledge and information, is not to hold on to that mentor forever, but to take what is needed in that moment. And then as you move forward on your journey, you can continue to grow and plant those seeds in others and inspire others as well. So that is the whole purpose of this platform. We will be diving deep into, of course, astrology, numerology, mindfulness, yoga, trauma, death, rebirth, sex, so many different things in the magical world, and seeing how we can bring them into this physical world and truly transform our life and our self. So thank you all so much. I'm really excited for the future of this podcast, what this develops into, and I can't wait to see you for our next episode. Take care of yourself.